Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Steve.
I'm Lindsay.
Today we're going to be reading to Football Explained for Americans. Now, obviously in the US, people do watch football or what we know as soccer, but it's definitely much less popular of a sport than, say, basketball or baseball or American football. Growing up, I did play soccer or football, but I never really knew the rules or the regulations of it. It was one of those things that we had a football or a soccer ball, as we would call it, and we go out on the football field and, try to score a goal. And that was it. We had teams, but there was no
Well, it's mostly for fun.
Right.
It wasn't serious.
But to be honest, guys, I don't think I've ever actually seen an actual football match or game. I'm not really sure what it's called.
I mean, I've seen obviously clips
Right.
and they're on ESPN
Sure.
on YouTube somewhere, but I haven't watched a game.
Yeah, are you like me in that if someone was to ask you what the rules or how you actually play football, you wouldn't know really how to answer?
No, the only thing I really know, I think I know, is that you can't touch the ball. Is that true? You can't grab it with your hands?
Yes. I mean, obviously, that's the one thing I do know. You got to kick it or hit it with your head, I believe.
Yeah, I think you can hit it with your head, but that's all I know.
But yeah, I know to a lot of people, if you're watching from the UK, Ireland, anywhere else in Europe, or probably most countries around the world, football is a very popular sport. And so to see people like us that don't really know anything about it
seems unbelievable.
It seems unbelievable. But growing up where we're from, it's just not that popular of a sport, really.
And especially if it's smaller schools, most schools,
Right.
unless you live in a bigger city or area, they don't even have soccer
Right.
as a school sport. So.
Right. So this is going to be interesting. It's something I've wanted to look into for quite some time now, because I do know that it is one of, if not the most popular sport in the world. I do know that. And so, obviously I want to kind of know how it's played. So hopefully we can check out a game at one day and actually know what we're looking at. So anyways, guys, enough rambling from us. Let's go ahead and dive in here and check out how football is played, explained to us Americans. I hate watching soccer. They have to bring the stretcher out at least 6 times a game. So that's us, by the way, clueless. We are absolutely clueless on football.
Yeah.
Well, these other questions, why are teams getting kicked out of leagues? Why are they all rolling around on the ground so much? How are guys getting traded to different countries? And why does everybody in the stands have a scarf? So a few months ago, I tried to start figuring it all out, and I started watching some matches. That's the first thing. They aren't soccer games. They are football matches.
Oh.
Matches,
and I
okay.
bought FIFA for my Xbox, and I bought a scarf and a vuvuzela because that's the rules or something. So anyway, this is all the info that I wish I'd known a year ago. This is my crash course of translating soccer into American. The biggest difference between American sports is how offsides works and the clock.
What's an
Lots of people
offside?
get upset about the clock.
Sideline?
It goes up instead of down. Get over yourself. It doesn't really matter.
I'm already lost.
Yeah, I have no idea what offsides are. It probably has something. It's probably an American football as well, but I've never been an American football fan, so it's not something I really watch. I'm more of a basketball and baseball fan myself.
Americans also get mad because the clock doesn't stop and games pretty much end whenever the ref feels like it.
Really?
And you actually adjust to this pretty quickly. The game's an hour and a half long. You'll have your chances to score. And if you can't score, then it's not the clock's fault. Some people, and when I say people, I'm referring both to discussions I've had with other Americans as well as myself 6 years ago. So people think soccer is too slow. And when Americans look at a soccer field, something in our minds, we think that it's like playing hockey or playing basketball just on a big grass field. And in those sports, guys go full tilt a lot.
Right.
Most of the game.
Yeah.
So when two players are just standing there passing the ball back and forth, we wonder, why aren't they trying to move forward? Just go. And on the other side, we expect the defenders to be attacking the guy with the ball rather than just standing 5 feet back and letting him do what he's doing.
Yeah. That would be
The
frustrating.
key difference is that football pitches are much larger than basketball
Pitches.
courts and hockey rinks.
Oh,
And if you try to
wow.
full court press for the whole soccer game,
Do you see that?
you would be
Whoa,
exhausted.
what?
Wow.
What?
That is huge.
No, that is not to scale.
More or less to scale.
So that's a basketball
Yeah.
court? And
Yeah.
no.
It would be, wow, that's huge. That's like 10 times the size of a basketball court.
Gosh.
I wonder how large a, what do you call this, a football pitch is compared to an American football field.
I don't know. I wonder why it's so big. Like, why did they decide to make it so huge?
I don't know how many players are in a soccer
there's
match
a ton.
or a football match.
Are there?
I don't know.
And you would probably lose. See, the pace of a soccer game is actually much closer to baseball. Most of the game is going to consist of guys just slowly passing the ball around, real peaceful. And then it's going to be all of a sudden followed by these short bursts of extremely fast action. Basketball players, it's estimated, run an average of 2.5 miles during a game. Soccer players can run 7, if not 10 miles during one game.
So it's much more about endurance than like high intensity. Oh my word.
Wow. 7 miles? That's insane. I would have never guessed that.
Neither.
All right.
And remember, you only have 3 subs games, so most of these players will be playing the whole game.
Wow.
One thing Americans will appreciate is that other than halftime, there are no commercials. So it's like the anti-NFL.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
It also means that no matter where the ball is, both teams are always potentially about 30 seconds away from scoring, which creates this kind of constant tension. It also creates a scenario where you can't ever really run to the bathroom or get a drink. Soccer players seem to have a reputation for being lazy in the U.S. because they don't always pop right back up after going to ground and get right back into play. Certainly some players do embellish things and some go over the top, but I don't really think that on the whole it's quite the issue that people make it out to be. So they get made fun of in Europe too. Go to like a local field and then quickly jog laps around that field for like 10 minutes and then suddenly sprint down the middle of the field as fast as you can. And when you're halfway up the field, while you're still sprinting, have one of your friends just shove you over onto the ground. And if you can pop right back up and keep sprinting, then you can keep complaining about those guys.
Oh, gosh.
A lot of the time, they're just taking a little rest. And everyone will either just keep playing around them, or both teams will be a little tired, so who cares? It's not a Matthew Riley novel out there.
Yeah, like if you're going like 7 miles or more a game or a match.
That's crazy. I never would have guessed that.
The other reason for guys slowly passing the ball around is that one of the strategies currently employed by most teams is to maintain possession as much as possible. Obviously, this is no different in American football or why Russia is really good at hockey. The other team can't score when you have the ball.
Yeah, that's true.
So teams will just pass the ball back and forth and even pass it back to their own goalie because it's better to go backwards with the ball than to maybe make a risky pass and let the other team have the ball.
So you can go backwards.
So you can pass it back to your goalie?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. But so that makes me wonder, is one of the strategies with football to basically try to score, you score, and then at that point you try to hold the ball as long as you can?
On occasion, you'll see a team make like 50 passes without the other team touching the ball, which can take a really long time, but then they'll go down and they'll score.
That's insane.
And that's like as good as it gets. It's all about waiting for the precise moment for things to align and then all going together at the right moment. In terms of like positioning and formations, you'll usually have 3 or 4 numbers, like 4-4-2 or 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1. These numbers will always add up to 10, and then the goalie is just assumed. Different positions include the center backs, who just stay as defenders, and then the full backs are both the left.
Okay, this is going to seem, just weird that I wouldn't realize this, but I never knew football players had actual positions.
In soccer? That's
yes.
the kind of it just throws me off when you say football because I'm thinking American
I know.
football.
Let's just say for this video
when you
purpose,
say football, you're talking about soccer.
Okay. Yes, we're talking about our version, what we call soccer.
I don't think I ever knew that. I mean, it's obvious. Every sport.
Yeah, I guess it does make sense, but it's just like as a kid, we all just went out there and kicked each other and try to get, score. I literally just never really thought about the fact that, the actual professional sport itself probably has positions.
Yeah.
That's just insane to me that, it does make sense when you really think about it. Every sport does, I guess, but wow, okay.
Left and the right back who will defend, but then they'll also usually join the attack as well. And then we have midfielders, like a center midfielder who can go both ways, a center attacking midfielder or a center defending midfielder. And then up front, we have like a left wing and a right wing, sometimes a center forward. and a striker up front it's his job.
And this is all the same team. That's a lot of positions.
The striker's job is to score goals. So I always just assumed that was everybody's, job.
I think anybody could probably take a shot if they had the ball and they could.
Is that like that's his only job? Like, okay, that's so
there's 1,
interesting.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10
plus the goalie. So 11.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
So keeping the ball and attacking is referred to as positive football. You're always trying to move forward.
This
is what most teams do. This is what people like to watch a little more. It's kind of exciting. It's more exciting to watch that way. But of course, there's always a yin to the yang. So the yin is this guy named Jose Mourinho. And he basically says, I don't want the ball. I'm going to stand back with my players in front of my goal, and you're not going to score. And then every once in a while, when you're falling asleep and all your players are up in my zone, we're going to steal the ball and we're going to run down and score, which sounds a little bit risky, except that it actually does work if you do it well. Jose's considered one of the best managers there is, and he has the trophies to back it up. On the flip side, the guys who've risen to the top playing possession football are also widely sought after. Two of the most well-known coaches right now are Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola. And I highly recommend watching the series All or Nothing about Manchester City on Amazon Prime. It's about Guardiola's team a few years ago. And it's quite clear from interviews with these guys that they're quite thoughtful and well-traveled. I couldn't name a single baseball manager who can speak 3 languages. So speaking of Manchester City, they play in England. There are 4 main football countries in Europe. There's England, Spain, Germany, and Italy. England has the Premier League, Spain has La Liga, Germany has the Bundesliga, and Italy has Serie A. So to take one country, they're all the same, but to take one country, England, the Premier League consists of 20 teams. Every team plays every other team, once at home and once away. And these leagues don't have playoffs. You get 3 points for a win, 1 for a tie. The team with the most points at the end of the season wins.
Okay.
This can and has come down to the final day of the season before. In the U.S., our leagues pretty much have the same teams every year. So if you suck, and even if you start to lose on purpose, you actually get rewarded with the top draft pick the next year. If you finish in last place in one of these leagues, they literally kick you out of the league. But they call it relegation because that's a nicer sounding word. Before we keep going, here's a quick aside on the MLS. Major League Soccer is the top league in the United States. It's different in many ways than the European leagues. There's no relegation, so the teams do stay the same from year to year, and there is a salary cap. Talent-wise, I guess globally speaking, it seems to be an okay league, but certainly not on par with any of the European leagues.
That doesn't surprise me, considering that it's just not as popular here as most other nations. The Premier League in England.
Like world something.
Right. It's something about the world. What is that? Like, the Premier League in England has 20 teams that are playing against each other, and then the one with the most points wins. Is it the team with the most points from the Premier League goes on to play in some sort of worldwide tournament or something?
I have no idea.
Let us know in the comments, guys. This is so new to us. We have no idea.
So under the Premier League, which is at the top, under them is a league called the English Football League Championship. The 3 teams who finish at the bottom of the Premier League are relegated to the Championship for the next season and replaced by 3 teams from the Championship. The bottom 3 teams in the Championship are relegated to League 1. The bottom 3 in League 1 are relegated to League 2, whose losers go to the National League, whose losers are... nobody really cares about them except their moms at this part, but you get the idea. Unless you really get into soccer, you'll never hear about anything below the Premier League again. But just so you're aware of what's happening down there. This system does a few things. First off, just because you're near the bottom of the standings, your games can still be extremely important. They still count because you're not trying to win the league anymore, but now you're trying to literally stay in the league. And the higher the league you're in, the higher the check you get from TV contracts.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of a big deal.
Okay.
It also creates this kind of theoretical meritocracy where you could start a team with a bunch of guys anywhere in the country, get into a kind of a tiny league, and then ultimately work your way up to the Premier League. In reality, that'd be like trying to take a single-A baseball team and work your way up to the majors, while the other better teams with bigger pocketbooks are trying to buy all your best players and win. But for the teams at the top, just winning the Premier League sounds pretty easy. You're playing maybe 1 game a week. But that's the catch. There's other things going on here. So there's also the Carabao Cup, which is a tournament open to the top 4 leagues in England. And then there's the FA Cup, which has been going on since like forever, that it's literally open to every like team in England. So over 700 teams entered this one tournament last year. Like imagine if every major and minor league baseball team had one giant tournament. So could any team win? Yes, they could. Will the small teams upset the bigger teams? At some point, maybe a few will. But is it likely that a non-Premier League team is going to win? No, probably not. Final tournament is the big one. Like, what if we could find the best team in Europe? And I don't mean like each country gets a team. That's the European Championship that happens every 4 years. This, I'm talking about the league clubs.
Every 4 years.
The best teams from all over Europe, from 55 different countries, battle it out each year. This is the UEFA Champions League. So as a side note on these acronyms here, FIFA is the organization that runs like big international tournaments like the World Cup. And they help
the World Cup. That's what I was thinking about.
See, like different.
Yeah, that's why you would see some team in England versus Brazil, for example. Okay, that makes sense.
Coordinate things across different regions. If you're an American, you probably heard of FIFA because somebody on
it definitely very complex.
Somebody that was involved with some kind of corruption investigation or something. Anyway, within FIFA, the world is divided into 6 different regions. UEFA is Europe. That's where like the best players go. CONCACAF, you may have heard of because that's what the U.S. is in, the Confederation of North, Central American and Caribbean Association Football, which is short and sweet. And then there's like the rest of the world. And each one of these groups has tournaments with national teams and their league clubs, like the CONCACAF Champions League and the UEFA Champions League. And I won't get into the qualifying, but typically you're going to have teams that you may have heard of as an American, like Manchester City, Liverpool, Manchester United, Tottenham Hotspur.
I've heard of those.
Spain,
Barcelona, Real Madrid.
Madrid.
That's funny.
That we know that much, but we don't know anything about it. We know.
Right. Obviously, doing so many reactions to the UK, it makes sense that I would know, some of these names, but Barcelona and Real Madrid, for some reason, I even think of those when I think of football, even though I don't watch football.
For me, I think the reason I know the UK ones is in movies.
Yeah.
Like, remember the movie Euro Trip? Wasn't that the movie?
Yeah.
Where he was like, got stopped like in the middle of a
I don't remember it.
Football rivalry.
But it wouldn't surprise me.
Manchester United and I think Liverpool.
Real Madrid, Serie A from Italy. We'll have Juventus and Inter and Roma and Atalanta. Germany is pretty much dominated by Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. And then there's other popular teams like Paris Saint-Germain from France and Lyon from France and Ajax from the Netherlands. And then you throw in a few Russian teams and you're ready to party. So back to the Premier League. You remember how your team's playing that kind of standard 38-game schedule. So now, also at the same time, you're competing in the Premier League, the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, and the Champions League. And there's like a bunch of other small one-off games happening too. So even if you have the best team, you're still probably not going to win all these tournaments just because of the wear and tear.
Yeah.
If you can win 3 trophies in a year, that's like special. That's called a treble. If you win 4, that's called a quadruple, but that's pretty rare. In the U.S., most leagues have a draft, but soccer's pretty much like the Wild West. So teams will sign players, or I should say kids, like into their youth academy very young, like 10, 8 years old. And smaller teams who find a really good player could also include something called a sell-on clause when selling a player to a larger team that says if the team buying that player turns around and sells the player again to an even bigger club, then that original team
it just
will
sounds
get a
really
percentage.
weird.
It does sound really weird to say
Joes or
buying a player. That's a very interesting way to put it. I don't know. Is that the way they usually talk about a player transferring to another team in other sports as well?
I don't think so.
I've never really heard it said that way. Like this team is buying a player. I don't know. This is much more confusing than I thought it was. There's
way more to it.
There's way more to it than I ever would have imagined. But guys, this is obviously just the start of our journey learning about football in any capacity. So if you have any ideas of what we should check out next.
A really good video about how the game's played.
Yeah, like we want to know, all the ins and outs of the game itself. What do the different positions do during a game exactly?
Right.
How are they interacting with the ball and the other players?
This was a good overview of everything about it, though.
Right. Yeah, it was a good overview of like just the ins and outs of like football
in general.
In general, for someone who, or for people who knew absolutely nothing about it, which was us. And now I feel like we've gone up just a little notch.
Yeah, we've got a little bit more of a grasp on what it is.
Yeah, I'm gonna feel a little bit more comfortable, looking at a football match at this point than I was before this. Slightly. But yeah, so hopefully we can kind of see some clips or something to understand a little bit more about what's going on. I'd love to see some really cool, like some really cool goals, some really cool plays in football. Some compilations like that. So if you have any ideas of some compilations we should check out to see some of the coolest plays you can see, or the most awesome plays you can see in football, let us know in the comments, guys. But I think that's it for us today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for stopping by. Please click that like button. Feel free to drop your comments or suggestions about this video or others. And don't forget to subscribe to continue to follow us on our journey to discover anything and everything from the UK and Ireland. Until next time, guys. Peace.
Bye.